Welcome to Red Light, Green Light, the podcast where you'll hear from industry leaders in science, technology, and innovation about the power of strategic storytelling. With decades of experience, our guests will share their own insights and real-world stories to help you avoid red light barriers and ignite green light solutions, from the Zoom room to the boardroom. In each episode, we'll corkscrew downward into the guests' personal experiences of challenge and success, highlighting strategies that turn complex ideas into clear, compelling storylines for stakeholders. Here is where expert minds share stories that shape the future. What's more, you'll walk away with tips to try immediately to drive the vision of innovation with your team. Hi, everybody. I'm Cindy Skalicky, and I want to welcome all of you to the next edition of our podcast, Red Light, Green Light. We bring to you leaders in science, technology, and innovation who bring decades of experience and storytelling right to you so that you can learn, apply, maybe even laugh. Today, I'm thinking you're going to laugh, learn, and apply with my amazing guest and friend, Bill Stainton. Bill, how are you today?
I'm good, but when you say they bring decades of experience, is that just another way of saying, yeah, I've got old people for you to listen to?
Well, those are your words, not mine. No, I'm kidding. Bill, it's so great to have you here, and it's been such a pleasure getting to know you over the years. Bill,
Yeah, thanks, likewise.
Yeah, thank you. I want to just give you a quick intro from what I've got here on my piece of paper, and then I would love for you to share with us your kind of your career journey. But Bill, for all of you who are listening and watching, if you don't know, Bill Stainton is a Hall of Fame keynote speaker. He has won 29 Emmy Awards, and he is an expert in innovation, creativity, and how to think differently. And he brings these skills and stories to audiences all over the world, both on stages and with groups of individuals looking to up their innovation game. So, Bill, you have so much to share in terms of your career arc. Where would you start as far as kind of 3 stepping stones that you would bring to us?
Well, let's see. I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. My backyard growing up was an Amish dairy farm.
Nice.
So I went from there to 29 Emmys, which is a shame because my dream was to win 30 Emmys.
See, there is still time.
There is time, but I'm not in television anymore. No, but my
Television, what's that?
background basically is, yeah, television. That was a thing I used to do. Anyway, so my background is that for 15 years, I produced the longest running, highest rated, and most award-winning regional comedy TV show in the United States. It was called Almost Live. And we won a lot of Emmys for that. For those of you who haven't seen it, which I'm guessing is most of you, just think Saturday Night Live on a regional level. We produced it in Seattle. And we were all over the Pacific Northwest. We were also syndicated on Comedy Central for 2.5 years. So we were a national show for a time.
Awesome.
But basically, I did what Lorne Michaels does on a slightly different level and for slightly less pay.
Well, take us right to the Emmys. What was that like to win Emmys and to win the first one versus the 29th one?
Yeah, and there is a difference. You ask anybody who gets into television, they want to win an Emmy because that's the hallmark. They want to be an Emmy-winning producer, writer, performer, whatever. And so I remember when I won my first Emmy for as the producer of this show. And then as soon as you win the first Emmy, then your next goal is, well, I want to be a multiple Emmy Award winner.
Of course.
I've got to win a second one. Well, I won my second one about 5 minutes after I won my first one.
Okay, nice work.
So okay, now I had those boxes checked. So the next 27 were, I'm not going to say meaningless. They weren't, but already a multiple Emmy Award winner.
Yeah.
So
been 5 minutes.
After a while, it started to get a little embarrassing. But I did win in 3 areas. I won as a producer, as a writer, and as a performer.
Okay.
So
Bill, which order? What were you first? Producer, writer, performer, or?
It was all 3 at the same time, but my primary job was producer. So I produced this TV show for 15 years, this sketch comedy
Mm-hmm.
TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Our job, Cindy, literally every week was to be innovative
Yes.
on demand,
Yes.
whether we felt like it or not. Because I mean, you know this as well as I do. So
Mhm.
many people, so many leaders, so many people who like to think of themselves as innovators, they think it's this, you've got to wait for this spark of inspiration,
Right.
for this lightning bolt to come
Mm-hmm.
down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you something, when your paycheck depends on you being innovative every
Oh,
week, you
yep.
can't afford to wait for a lightning bolt. So I had to
Right.
be innovative. Um, that TV show took me through. I I remember we produced a show the day I signed divorce papers,
Oh my goodness.
the day I had to have my dog put down,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then go right back to work and do.
And be funny, right? Like,
You've
yeah,
got to be funny, and to do that when you're not feeling it,
yeah.
that's doing the work. But here's the cool thing. So those 15 years of producing Almost Live, that was the name of the show, Almost Live. Um, it basically it was really a 15-year innovation lab that I got to lead.
Nice.
A
Yes.
15-year long innovation lab, because every week we could try something that, oh, that
Yeah.
didn't work. Oh, that worked really well. Oh, let's do this. Let's shift this around.
Mm-hmm.
And if one week wasn't great, then okay, we've got another shot at this.
Right.
That's and
Right.
you know this. That's what innovation is all about. You're trying things. You're not going for perfection out of the right off the bat. If that
Right.
happens, great. That's
Yeah.
icing on the cake. That's a
Right.
bonus.
Right.
It's not typically the way it works.
Right.
It is a lab. And
It is
for 15 years,
constantly.
I got to be a part of this amazing group doing incredibly fun work.
Yes, with great
Comics.
people and guests and
Yeah.
all the things, right? Oh, so amazing. Love it. I just love it. Well, I kind of think of that period of your life based on what I know as kind of like in the middle. So I'm wondering, can you take us a little bit back before you got into that level of television and how you arrived there? And then tell us after that, where did you go after the Emmys had been won and now into what you're doing now? So take us back to
Sure.
the beginning and get us to the TV line.
Well, in the beginning, I knew I wanted to work in television
After the Amish farm.
after the Amish farm. Now, for the record, we were not Amish. It's just, the people who live behind us.
Nothing against anyone who's Amish, but
They're not watching this anyway.
right.
Uh, but I mean, it does have its advantages. Growing up behind an Amish dairy farm has its advantages.
Yeah.
I can milk a cow with the best of them.
Awesome.
At least with the second best. I'm a little out of
Second.
practice, but
Yeah, a little bit.
little bit. But so I got my first job in television as kind of a glorified secretary, and by glorified I mean unglorified.
Okay.
I got a job at my local TV station in Lancaster, Pennsylvania,
Okay.
basically answering viewer mail.
Nice. Okay.
So that was it.
Your job.
It came down to getting that job. Came down to I had like 4 or 5 interviews to go through to get this secretarial job.
Okay.
But the last thing was a typing test.
Mm-hmm.
It was between me and one other person,
Really?
and I was a better typist. That got me the job, and that was the last television job I ever applied for. Every other job,
Wow.
they came looking for me because
Really?
Here's what I did. And I didn't know I was doing anything that was remarkable, except as I've gone on, I found that it actually was, because nobody else seems to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, it was a relatively small station in a relatively small market. I think we were the 48th largest market in the country, so that's
Mm-hmm.
not shabby, but still. So the first day I'm there, I'm answering the viewer mail, and then 5 o'clock comes around. It's quitting time. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
everybody else goes home. Everybody who works on
Mm-hmm.
that particular show is a show called PM Magazine.
Okay.
Everybody who worked on that show went home. I didn't. I stuck around, and I found my way to the engineering room.
Okay.
And I said, "Hey, do you guys have a manual for the editing equipment?"
Oh,
And they said, yeah. So they dug one up. So I stayed most of the night and taught myself how to edit. And I did that for a week.
wow. Yeah.
I learned editing.
Great.
Then the second week I did the same. I wasn't getting much sleep, but I was young. You don't know.
Right. Right.
The second week I did the same thing with the field camera. I'm doing this because this is with the field camera.
Yes. Right. Right.
Wasn't
remember
like
those.
this. It was, yeah. So basically I taught myself how to edit, and I taught myself how to use the camera, and then I just waited for somebody to get sick.
Mm-hmm.
PM Magazine was some of the people listening to this, watching this, might remember there were about 120 of them around the state, around the country.
Okay.
Every major market had their version. It was kind of a collective, like you
Mhm.
produce a story, and then other stations would have the option to run that story if it was deemed good enough. And
Okay.
so,
Okay.
so I taught myself how to do this, and then I waited for somebody to get sick, and eventually somebody did, and we were gonna not be able to shoot on a particular segment. And I said to my boss, I said, "Well, John, listen, I think maybe I can do this. I think maybe I can put this together."
Yeah.
Because the person who produces it also shoots and edits it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, look, the alternative is to just lose the shoot.
Right.
Well, let me have a shot at it. If it's terrible, you don't air it. We're no worse off than you are now. But
What if it works?
turned out it was good. And then he
So
said,
what's that show about? Do you remember?
it was just it was a 5-minute segment or a 7-minute segment about a local some local event that was going to be happening in Lancaster.
Well, I love that.
A German beer fest, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but it was low stakes, and you taught yourself how to ride the next bike, right? So to
Yeah,
speak, and just
exactly.
made sure you could be versatile. And I think, nowadays that's a lot of times what we want to do to stay in the flow of relevance wherever people are working. Maybe some of you listening are learning new skills by taking new courses or going online
Right.
to learn new skills. And so that's just a really smart way to stay ahead and be innovative, and also easily selected for the next role when the time comes. So
Well, it is. It's all about being proactive. And look,
right.
I didn't have this great plan when I was doing it, but
Sure.
eventually I started producing feature stories, and those started getting picked up on what was
Yeah.
called the national reel, and people across the country were starting to see
Yep.
these stories are pretty good coming from this
Yeah.
guy in Lancaster. And then a station in Portland, Oregon figured, oh, they were looking for a story producer, and they kept
Yeah.
seeing my stuff, and they figured he's from Lancaster, he'll probably work cheap. And,
Right. Off
they
you
were
went.
right.
Yeah, they were right. They were
And
right.
then that led to another thing. And then all of a sudden, this station in Seattle, Washington wanted to produce a comedy show, and they did a nationwide search twice
So
trying to
great.
find somebody to produce it. And somebody there said, there's this guy down in Portland
Yeah.
I want
Okay.
to talk to. And
Nice.
but it all started, well, first of all, it all stemmed because of the fact that I took a typing course in high school.
Right.
So I was a better typist. But the bigger point in hindsight, the big now that I look back on is, again, I was proactive. I wasn't waiting for somebody.
Yes.
I wasn't
Right.
waiting for somebody to get sick and then preparing myself.
Right.
It's being proactive. And when I talk to leaders and work with leaders
Mhm.
about innovation, I make it a clear distinction between proactive and reactive innovation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Here's what I mean by that. Most leaders, most businesses, most companies, most organizations still have this idea of innovation as kind of this, this, in case of emergency thing hanging on the
Right.
wall with a little silver hammer.
Like,
In
it's
case of
over
emergency,
there.
yeah,
Mhm.
innovate.
Yeah.
And what happens is if the emergency happens and you haven't already been innovating proactively, well, you don't know how to do it anymore.
Right.
It's like
Right.
trying to use Photoshop when you haven't used it for a year and a half.
Jeez.
This is the person who uses it every
Yeah.
day.
Right. Right.
So
So
all
true.
of a sudden a crisis happens and it's like, oh, I think I remember how to innovate. You're
Right.
already behind the curve.
Right. Right.
But if
Exactly.
you're proactively looking for ways to innovate, and this is what I help organizations do,
Mhm.
make it part of their culture, so that muscle, that innovation muscle, it's like going to the gym every day. So then you're ready. It's just being proactive, being
Right.
prepared for
Yeah.
when it's the old thing about when opportunity and what is it mixes and opportunity is already there. It's
Oh, and luck, something
preparation.
like that. Yeah.
Opportunity means preparation or something like that. Well, the preparation has to come first.
Yes, yes. Well, it's the same thing that I share about storytelling and the muscles that if you keep telling stories and if you keep ideating and thinking about stories, you'll become a really good storyteller. And so what I think is true about what I know is true about story is probably also true for innovation, which is that people are doing it all the time. They just don't think of it that way. I say people are telling stories all the time. They have thousands of stories in their arsenal. And then I get on a call with them and it's like, Cindy, I don't have any stories. And I'm like,
I just saw you posted a video about that. It amazed me. I remember reading an interview with David Letterman. It wasn't like David Letterman and I were reading this interview. It was a written interview about him.
Right.
You know, I was reading a magazine by myself.
Right.
And this is when he saw his TV show on late night.
Sure.
And he said, most people who come on the show, they don't seem to realize all I'm looking for is two good stories.
Yep.
That's all.
It.
He said, and if you've gotten to be 20 years old or more and don't have two good stories, at least two good stories, you're doing it wrong.
Right.
We all do, but we don't recognize it. And this is your genius in being able to draw out those stories.
Right. Just asking the right questions. Yeah. Yeah. And innovating is the same. It's very much the same kind of practice.
It's the same thing. And I think I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this. I think what happens is people put labels like storyteller and innovator in this on this kind of pedestal.
Yes.
And it only applies to like Steve Jobs. Like if I don't invent the iPhone, I'm not an innovator. In fact, I can't even, call myself that. I can't play in that sandbox.
Right.
Or storytellers are, the greats, like the Mark Twains. If I'm not Mark Twain, I'm not a storyteller. It's like that's first of all, if that was the bar, there'd be no innovation and no storytelling at all.
Exactly. And that's one thing I've recently realized about story, and maybe some of you listening or watching feel like this. When I say you need a story for your 5-minute presentation, people think I'm telling them to read a novel to the audience and that they need to write it.
Right.
Like, actually, no, you just need about 60, maybe 75 seconds of a really chiseled, smart, crafty, direct, well-positioned story.
Right.
It's more like an anecdote. Sometimes it's even just called an example, right? Yeah. But you need that sticky emotional piece so that you can get liftoff for the rest of your innovative.
But it does take craftsmanship. Again, this is what you teach, because so many people, they think, oh, I'm telling a story. No, you're not. You're just reciting a chronology of things that happened.
Yes.
Here's what happened. Here's every detail. Okay, these 5 details aren't important.
Right.
The job of the story is to create an emotional arc.
Exactly.
And that's where if you don't naturally know how to do that, that's why people should hire a coach.
Well, right. I mean, it's an art and a science. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Bill, let's turn a little bit toward some of the questions I want to bring out for the audience and with your help around red lights and green lights. And I'm going to lead us toward a certain storyline that I would love for you to share with our audience. But, in your world, red lights for your clients, customers, audiences of people who are really trying to innovate internally. For example, you've got an organization, you're running an innovation session with them. What are some red lights that block innovation from happening when you're standing in that room and you're trying to get them to learn innovation? And then tell us a few kind of like green light things or tools or techniques that take us forward and help us feel excited about innovating. Start us off with some red lights.
Well, some of them we've just talked about, and the biggest ones are the mindset red lights. Again, there's the idea of people thinking that innovation, it's this big word, and creativity as well. Yep. And for the purposes of this, I'll kind of use them interchangeably, even though you and I know they're not the same thing.
Right.
But they feel that it's a private club. And there's a red velvet rope around it, and they're not allowed in to this private club because they are not Steve Jobs. They are not,
Is this true? Like, do people really say this? Like that they don't think I believe that is possible, but I'm over here like, really? Do people really think that innovation can't be what they do? Is that what you run into with in these rooms?
Oh, absolutely. There was a study done in 2017, and there have been similar studies since then and before then, and the results are pretty much always the same. About 80% of adults don't feel like they're creative. And if you don't feel
Interesting.
like you're creative, then you're not going to be an innovator, because
Right.
creativity is the ground floor for
Yeah,
innovation.
so interesting.
And
Yeah,
that's 4 out of 5 adults.
that's
So,
just crazy. Sorry, go ahead, keep going.
so so the first step is getting past that mindset of it being a private club and getting into the mindset of, no, it's actually an open playground.
Mm,
And we're
hmm.
all welcome to play. It doesn't have to be earth shattering. That's a second mindset. People think, well,
Yes.
if I don't invent the electric car, it doesn't count. They all
Right.
count.
Ridiculous.
Innovation, all innovation really is, Cindy, is solving problems in a creative way.
In a creative way.
Problems come in all sizes and shapes.
Yep. Yep.
There are big ones, there are little ones, which means
Yeah.
big innovations, there are little
Yeah.
innovations,
Great.
and
Great.
they all count. And we
Mm-hmm.
all have that ability. So
Mm-hmm.
part of my job is to, one, knock down some of these
Yeah.
myths and
Yep.
misconceptions that keep people from even feeling like they're allowed to be part of the conversation,
Right. Right.
to showing them that, no, this is innovation, this is creativity. There's
Mm-hmm.
I do a few things during my keynotes and in workshops too, but even in
Mm-hmm.
keynotes, I'll do like a simple little activity, and there'll be an audience of people there. Again, 4 out of 5 of whom don't think they're creative. If they're
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere
Yeah.
close
That.
to the average,
Yep. Yep.
and they start doing this, and it's amazing. I know you've seen this too with the people you work with. All of a sudden, you see this kind of light going. They go,
Oh, it's so great.
and
Yeah.
also, and they it's almost like they say, and I've actually had people say this to me. Wait, is this innovating? Oh well,
Am I doing it right?
yeah. No, I mean, I can do this.
Yeah, I
That's
can do this.
I thought I had to like write code or be able to solder electrical components or something like. No, this is
Yes.
innovating. Well, I know how to do this. Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
It's,
It just calls.
innovation is just it's about curiosity and problem solving. Well,
Yeah.
who do we know who are invested? Their entire lives are about curiosity and problem solving. Little kids
I was
talking.
going to say children.
Children.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and we don't lose that. We lose parts of it. And actually, there are some good reasons for that. People say, oh, it's a tragedy, But I mean, there are reasons for that.
Sure.
But the fact is, we still have that in us.
Yes.
We may have forgotten it, but we still have that within us. So a big part of my work is to kind of just bring that back.
Yeah, I love that. So you're in a room, you're working with a group. I want you to kind of think back to a team you've helped that it was just like, my gosh, that was completely explosive. One of the best days I've done with a team ever.
Yeah.
When you finally moved this team in the room toward that green light and they were absolutely on fire, eyes lighting up. Maybe it got noisy, maybe it got playful, maybe
yeah.
posted. What had you unpacked? I mean, I know you said earlier, like just the thought of innovating, but what results did it lead to? What kind of other green lights did this team generate?
It's interesting because what happens is once they learn how to do it,
Yeah.
they don't need me anymore. I mean, they might bring me in from time to time for a little refresher.
Sure.
Once they kind of get the skill set and also the mindset and the skill set, then they're kind of on fire. Once they realize, oh, look at this toy I have. Look at this thing I have between my ears. We can do this. Oh, let's do more of this. This is fun.
Yeah.
You talked about the room getting loud. It also gets loud with laughter.
Yes.
When you ask people to think differently and
So
to
great.
be kind of wild, I never asked them to try and be funny. Because again, that's another, I can't, no, that's not for me. I can't be funny.
I'm not funny.
Yeah, exactly. But all of a sudden you ask people to start, okay, let me backtrack just a bit.
Sure.
Here's what innovation really is. It's not a lightning bolt that comes down.
Yeah.
Innovation really is all about connecting dots.
Yes. Yes.
2 or more things that don't typically necessarily belong together and finding a connection. Boom. That's exactly what comedy is. That's what joke writing is. And I know that because that's what I did for 15 years. And I worked with the best. I worked with Jerry Seinfeld and Ellen DeGeneres and Jay Leno and people like that. So it's the exact same process. It's taking 2 or more things that people don't think belong together and boom, finding that connection. In comedy, we call it the punchline. In innovation, we call it the iPhone. It's the same process. In
In the
fact,
kitchen, we call it peanut butter and pickle sandwiches. I had a neighbor ask me if I've ever eaten a peanut butter and pickle sandwich once, and I was like, what? And then I ate one, and I was like, okay, I'm in salty and sweet. I got you.
wow, interesting. Okay, I'm gonna have to
Try it, everybody.
no. You know what? No, I don't have to try that. But
You-
once people realize, because it's the same process of combining things in interesting ways, a lot of those combinations are just inherently funny. So all of a sudden, people start. You see these teams
Yes.
start laughing together, and when they start laughing together, that's when the whole dynamic of the room, the whole energy of the room shifts into a new space. It's a space. It's a context of
Yeah.
creativity, a context of
Mhm.
innovation. And once they're
Love
in there, then you kind of get in this zone because it is fun. It's and they're focused. And you know how this works, City. All of a sudden, time kind of becomes meaningless. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure you've been in that situation where all of a sudden you realize, my goodness, 16 hours has gone by and I haven't even gotten up to go to the
I
bathroom yet.
don't even
Well, maybe I
care,
should have
right?
gotten up. But I haven't eaten, I haven't
Right.
because
Yeah.
you're just so.
So on fire.
And again, it's just like those little toddlers playing with blocks. They can
Yeah.
immerse themselves for hours and hours.
Yeah.
What's the one way to stop them from that, to get them out of that zone? Show them how it's done.
Yes. Oh,
As
brilliant.
soon as you show
Oh,
them
that's
how
so
it's
true.
done, they
Yes.
lose all interest. That's why I tell leaders, I mean, I work with teams to help them become creative and innovative.
Yeah.
But a big part of my work also is working with leaders on how do you lead a creative team for those leaders who
Ooh,
have creative teams.
that's
And by the
hard.
way, if you're listening to this or watching this and you lead a team, you lead a creative team. If you don't think
Yes.
so, you're
Yes.
missing the potential because
Right.
every team has the potential to be creative. And I mean, I led this incredibly creative, innovative team for 15 years during that
Yeah.
15-year innovation lab.
Yes.
Here's what I found out. If you're going to lead a creative team, it all comes down to one simple thing. Give them the how. Or I'm sorry, that was completely wrong. Give them the what and let them surprise you with the how.
Okay, now it's time to tell the story, Bill. Okay, so when you and I were at that conference in Miami, and I had pulled up your TEDx, and you shared the
Oh,
storyline of one of what I would suggest is your greatest ushering in of innovation. Tell our audience that storyline from like accident to stress to like
I think I
explosion.
know what you're talking about.
I think you do.
Yeah. And let me preface this by saying I talked about innovations all about connecting dots.
Yeah.
Um, here's the thing. In order to connect dots, you have to collect the dots first. And what
Yep.
dots can be anything, ideas, experiences,
Yep.
people,
Mhm.
So the more ideas you encounter, the more experiences you have, the more
Mhm.
people you interact with, the more dots you collect, which means the more dots you can connect.
Yep.
But if all your dots are the same color, if they're all, navy blue dots, in other words, if
Mhm.
you only ever listen to the same podcasts or read the same kinds of articles,
Mhm.
listen to
Mhm.
the same music, the same newscasts, only ever
Mhm.
talk to this, hang out with the same people and talk about the same things, then you're just collecting a whole bunch of navy blue dots.
Mhm.
And a navy blue dot plus a navy blue dot equals a navy blue idea. I mean, you're really just collecting the same dot over and over again.
Yeah.
But
Boring.
what if you look outside, like, oh, there's a yellow dot there.
Mhm. Mhm.
A yellow dot and a navy blue dot. Oh, that makes a green idea.
Yep. Yep.
That
Love it.
outsider idea that you wouldn't normally think of. So,
Yep.
with that as background,
Yeah.
so I produced this TV show where I won a number of Emmy Awards. Oh, look, there's some now. There they are.
Oh, look,
Um,
at least 3, 4. Ooh.
Four. I've got 25 downstairs. Actually, I've got a bunch of broken ones in the garage too.
Well,
Yeah,
can't have
it
it all.
happens. It's a really poorly designed stat. Look, I mean, the ankles are weak, the wings are weak, and the globe is weak. You tip one of those things over, it shatters like a Fabergé egg.
Well, sweep it up. No.
So this one day, it was a Saturday, it was a show day. We taped our show on Saturday, and then it
Okay.
aired on Saturday night. And we were excited because it was in 1987, January 10th, 1987, and we'd gotten a big name. Now, back in 1987, it was hard to get big names to come to Seattle.
Yeah.
We didn't have Microsoft, we didn't have Amazon, we didn't have Starbucks, we
Right.
didn't have grunge music. We were not the center of the universe like we became in the 90s.
Yep.
So it was hard to get people that, but
Yeah.
we got Johnny Depp.
Yes. Oh, that's
Let's
who
be
it was.
clear,
I can't remember.
pre wackadoodle Johnny Depp, but we got
Okay.
Johnny Depp because he was shooting a TV series, 21 Jump Street, up in Vancouver, BC, which is like
Yes,
3
yes.
hours from us.
Yep.
And turns out he watched our show because
Mhm.
also turns out that TV signals can cross borders. So,
Awesome.
yeah,
Lucky for
exactly.
you.
That turned out to be very cool.
Yes.
There will boost some light here. Look at that. See what I did there? So
Super.
I've got a window there now. All of a sudden, the sun's coming out.
Oh, nice, nice.
Anyway, so
Johnny
we got Johnny Depp. Turned out he was a fan of the show, and so he was going to be our guest on tonight's show, January 10th, 1987. So we are pumped. It's like a genuine big name.
Yeah.
So we're so excited. We're all doing our little happy dances until around 11 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
I get a phone call from Johnny Depp, and he had to cancel.
Mm.
They scheduled reshoots for Jump Street, and he couldn't get out of it. And
Jeez.
it's show day.
Yeah.
It's like,
Ah.
what are we gonna do?
Oh,
You know,
jeez.
we have to find another guest to interview.
Yeah.
And it's got to be somebody local. So we're like, what about one of the Seahawks? No, they're out of town. What about,
Mhm.
and we go on, and for some reason, like nothing's working. They're not available. I made some calls. No, we're not around.
Mhm.
It just wasn't coming together. And we're running out of time, and we're running out of ideas. And finally, one of my writers, it was actually my lowest paid writer. My lowest
Mhm.
paid writer pops his head up with an idea. He says, I might be able to do something with with liquid nitrogen.
All right.
Which scared us all because this particular writer was a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And clearly he didn't understand the situation because we're trying to come up with a guest to interview, and he's babbling on about liquid nitrogen, which is it's no.
Yeah. No, wrong idea.
Let the grown-ups solve the problem. Lowest paid writer. Besides, you and I both know that good ideas can never come from the lowest paid writer, or the
Never.
quiet person, or the
Nope.
intern, or the new person.
Or the
they don't-
typist.
none of they can't. Good ideas only come from senior management.
Right. Right.
So we were trying to solve this problem, but we weren't solving it. So finally, it's like, okay, what's this? What's this liquid nitrogen? And he told us about it. So, no, I could do something because liquid nitrogen is very cold. You put a marshmallow in it. I take the marshmallow, pop it in my mouth, bite down, smoke comes out of my nose and mouth. Now he knew this because he had a science background.
Mm-hmm.
And so that night we had no choice. We put him on the air, and that's the night when Bill Nye, my lowest paid writer, became Bill Nye the science guy, who just about a month or month and a half ago was honored with this country's, the United States' highest civilian honor when he was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
So now
that's incredible.
why did that happen?
Oh, so great.
We were just looking at navy blue dots. Who can we get to interview? Who can we get to interview? Who can we get to interview? Bill Nye was different than we were.
Yeah.
We were all writers and producers. Bill Nye was and is a science guy. He's an engineer
Yes.
by trade and a science guy. He saw the world differently
Yep.
than we did. He was the yellow dot.
Yeah, totally.
He was
Totally.
the yellow dot, and
Yeah.
I almost missed it because I was wearing blinders. Look, we all
Yeah.
have blinders, and within those blinders, I could only see my navy blue dots of who can we get to interview.
Yes.
All we have to do is just like broaden the blinders
Yes.
enough to like, oh, there's that yellow dot.
Let me try that. I love that story so much. It says so many
again,
different things.
The good ideas can come from anyone.
Mhm.
Anyone on your team, the lowest paid
Yeah.
writer, the new person, the quiet person, the introvert,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, the good ideas are all around. And here's the secret. You never know which dot is going to lead to the breakthrough.
Yeah.
You
Oh.
never know which
You have to
dot.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a guy named Robert Palladino.
Mm-hmm.
He was a Trappist monk. He died in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And he taught a course in calligraphy at Reed College, just outside of Portland, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have never heard of Robert Palladino, but they may have heard of one of his students, a guy named Steve Jobs.
Oh, jeez.
Now, Steve Jobs, as it turns out, was a computer guy.
Yeah.
And he took this course in calligraphy.
Okay.
Now, most computer guys then, and you and I know this, they did computer stuff. They took computer courses, they read computer journals, they talked to computer people about computer things. They collected a lot of navy blue dots that said computer on them. And so did Steve Jobs. He collected those also, but he also collected this one yellow dot, a calligraphy course that had nothing to do with computers at the time. Until Steve Jobs and his buddy Steve Wozniak decided to build their own computer, and Steve Jobs, remembering that yellow dot that he happened to have collected, the other computer people didn't collect it. That dot was not available to them because they never collected it. But he'd collect. And he said to Steve Wozniak, "Hey, can we build a computer that does calligraphy?" Boom.
Oh, yeah.
Calligraphy computers don't belong together. Boom.
Yes,
Apple computers, the Macintosh, which ultimately leads to the iPhone.
Yeah, unbelievable.
All that because of a yellow dot. You never know which dot is going to lead to the breakthrough.
Bill, I need to send you an article, and for those listening, we'll stick this in the show notes. There's a fantastic article about Bill Gates when he was growing up, that he went on these long hikes, like think Stand By Me, and how and they'd go for like 5-6 days in a row together, just the 6 of them at like 13, 14 years old. And I think it's in the Northwest, kind of where you live.
Well, it would be. That's where he's from. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And so you're right. And he talks about in this article, because he's writing a book and it's about his past and kind of how
the book's out.
Yeah. And it's a fantastic story. They just shared an excerpt in the Wall Street Journal. And it's about how on one of these walks that he didn't want to go on and he didn't want to be there for, and he didn't want to, all these didn't want to yellow dots, ended up becoming the pathway for him to learn the code that he had been working on and start thinking through it in ways that could make it shorter, denser, tighter, better, clearer, and eventually led to the incredible innovations that he eventually worked on through his career. But that one long, snowy, cold, disastrous, and undesirable hike led to you and me working on his products, right? And it's incredible.
So you've got a long, boring, cold walk for Bill Gates. For Steve Jobs, you've got a calligraphy course taught by a Trappist monk. For me, you have Bill Nye, who happened to have an engineering degree, which is not what I hired him for. But in my history, it's like a typing course.
I was going to say, you've got a typing course.
The fact that a typing course ultimately led to 29 Emmys, show that was #1 in its time slot for 10 straight years, and the creation of an icon, Bill Nye.
You know what's funny? I just realized that Bill Nye is probably, if he was sitting here, he would be saying that his yellow dot was being a writer on this show. Like that I never would have had any reason. Like, he was a writer? Why was he writing? He was a scientist, right? So like, you're his yellow dot, right? Is sort of the main.
Oh, that's sweet. I don't know if he would say, well, actually he might. He's a good guy. I just talked to him last week.
But the thing that I'm seeing so much of right now is the art and science combination for all the people that we've just talked about that, is right there.
Because so much of what made Apple great was design. It was about design. I heard,
absolutely.
Have you heard the phrase STEAM? You've heard of STEM.
Yeah, STEAM is art, right?
And STEAM is STEM plus art. And I think that's much better.
So I got to ask you this before we run out of time, because I think one of the stories that I heard you share with me in Miami when we were walking from the conference hall to the restaurant was around rehearsing. And here's why I want to bring this up. So many of our clients and listeners and folks in our audience are constantly afraid of rehearsing, fearful of all that goes behind that, and wonder if they really need it. And I remember asking you, Bill, your TEDx, it's just fantastic. I'm sure it took you so long to perfect that as the art form that it is, as the performance that it is. And I remember you sharing just a little bit about your technique and kind of what you did. Can you just share a little about that now for our audience? Sure. And maybe some encouragement around the mindset piece that comes into rehearsing and the feeling you have on stage when you have it locked?
Yeah. First of all, so many people think, well, if I rehearse, it's going to sound rehearsed.
Mm.
If it sounds rehearsed, then either you've been rehearsing incorrectly or you're under rehearsed. You're actually
Boom.
under rehearsed.
Boom. Hmm.
It's like a musician learning a piece.
Yep.
But they're still learning it. My Steinway grand piano is downstairs. It's my constant distraction. When
Mm-hmm.
you're learning a piece, you're focusing on the notes. What note comes next? What finger should play this note? Once you have that really down, then you can start playing music. Until then,
Yeah.
you're only playing notes.
Yes.
And so that's the difference. When you have it down so that you no longer have to think about what comes next and what finger goes, that's when all of a sudden you can start playing music. And it's the same thing with storytelling, with giving a speech. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to completely memorize like
No.
full keynote. I don't have the full keynote memorized, but a TEDx talk is a different animal. My
Yes.
TEDx talk was 18 minutes. I kind of wish it had been 12, but it was 18 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
With 18 minutes, that's tight. You know,
Yep.
there's not a lot of room to play around.
Play
So,
around.
so you kind of have to know it. So
Yep.
here's what I did. I think I did the keynote on March 4th or March 7th of whatever
Okay.
year. My goal, which I accomplished, was I'm going to have that keynote locked and loaded 2 months before, like by January 7th. No more changes.
Okay.
So okay, it's this is what the keynote, or this is what the TED Talk is.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is it. I'm not going to be shifting things. I might make a word change here and there, but
Sure.
basically it's locked and loaded. Then for the next 2 months, I rehearse that sucker at least 3 times every single day. It was also, in addition to those rehearsals, I ran through it. As the first thing I did when I woke up before I even got out of bed was I ran the speech. And the last thing I did before I turned out the light was I ran the speech.
Ah.
So I was running the speech at least 5 times a day. And some of those rehearsals were speed rehearsals where I would say it as fast as I could.
Okay.
That's how you really know something.
Right. When you can play the music as fast as you can, or it's slow.
ABCDEFGHIJKLMNOPQRSTUVWXYZ.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to think about, wait, what comes after M?
Right. Right.
Yep, you just
Just
know it.
know it.
So
Yeah.
I would do that as well, and then I do other rehearsals for other things, like, oh, what if I say this part?
Slower.
I say this part
Right.
loud. What if I say this?
Mhm.
That's when you try new things. The script, as it
Right.
were, doesn't change, but you try new things. What if I
Beautiful.
what if I try this? And so I did that.
Love that. Oh,
then-
and the third one? Yeah, go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead.
and then so I did the keynote for 2,500 people in Vancouver, BC, and it was great. That's
Mhm.
spontaneous, a real standing ovation, which was nice. All that's great. My first thought when I walked off the stage was, I wish I'd run it just a few more times.
You're kidding.
No.
That surprises me because I don't remember you saying that to me, but I
Yeah,
can't.
no, I wish I'd rehearsed it just a few
Oh,
more
it's
times.
beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Because
Why?
when something is that important, like if you're a leader and you've
Mhm.
got to give an important presentation, maybe to the board or to
Yeah.
a customer that you want to make a sale to, whatever that is, man, you can't leave it to chance. You've got to rehearse.
Simon. Yeah. put
And
it in.
most people don't, because they just, well, that's I just have to do this.
I'll wing it, right? That's what
I'll
people say.
wing
I'll
it.
wing it.
Now, what did I have on the on the line there? Well, I didn't want to flop in front of 2,500 people. Plus, I'm a professional speaker, so I wanted the video of great theater and 2,500 people,
course.
that sort of thing. Some of the people that you work with, some of the people that I work with,
Mhm.
they've got million and multi-million dollar outcomes on the line, and they're
Yep.
going to wing it.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's hard to believe, but it's happening around us every single day, all the time. And when you get a speaker who's really good and hungry and wants to learn and has the space to pull a yellow dot like you or me in, magic happens and they see results, and it's really about the feeling. And that's the part that I have watched people experience. I have experienced, I know you have experienced, when you nail it and it's that you did a spectacular job and you got what you wanted, a standing ovation, an Emmy, whatever, $6 million for your startup, or $20 million for, your next move in your division. It's like you're on cloud 9 for days.
I mean, it can be life-changing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
not everything is actually,
Right.
changes the trajectory of, but
Right.
sometimes it can. And it's
Yeah.
so it's so much fun. You and I who work with clients, we get that. I mean, I'm a keynoter. Like every week I'm up giving a keynote someplace. And so I get that
Sure.
feeling over
Sure.
and over again. But it's so much fun when you see a client
Yeah.
get
It
that
really
feeling.
is.
Somebody's like, and they kind of look at you like, sometimes these are, high-powered CEO
Yes.
executives,
Yes.
and they look at you and say, see, look what I did, look what I did. I mean, they're
I
just,
got a text from someone about a month ago after she completely nailed it in front of 100 brand new managers in her division. And I mean, I was on cloud nine for two
yes,
or 3 days. She's
yes,
like, I crushed it. And I was like, yes, you did,
yeah,
because you went all in and you got that vulnerability and that beautiful storyline out that I told you was going to work, and it did, right? It's just
yeah.
so
It's a great
exciting.
feeling, isn't it?
It's so great. Oh, this has been so great, Bill. I have one more question for you around that I like to ask everybody because I always learn something. Who do you point to in your life that has guided you, that you admire, that paved the way a little bit for you somewhere along the line? And if you could, you might tip your hat to that person today.
Yeah, I think I'd probably have to name my uncle.
Okay.
He's gone now, but he
Hmm.
lived in Wyoming. He was an
Hmm.
engineer by trade.
Okay.
But he used to, when I would visit him when I was, a miscreant teenager,
Yeah.
my parents would send me to, here, you take him for the summer.
Yep. Yep.
So he had business all over Wyoming. And so I would drive him, and he
Okay.
would talk to me, and he was interested in everything, everything.
What's his name? Uncle what?
Bob
Uncle
Pettigrew.
Bob. Okay.
Yeah, Uncle Bob.
Hmm.
He was interested in science, history, art, music, engineering, everything. And he would ask me questions. Like he
Hmm.
would say, Bill, what do the people in Pennsylvania think about, what's happening in politics, or what do they think?
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm a 16-year-old kid. I don't even know what my family thinks. But he would ask me those kinds of questions
Yeah. Deep question.
about everything. He was so curious
Mm.
about
Mm.
everything. In
Love it.
fact, curious to the point where, now this is pre-internet, but if there was something he wanted to know more about, he wouldn't just like read an article or find a book in the library or something. Again, you couldn't just go online and find it. He would call the local university or the local college, and
Oh,
he would
you're
find a
kidding.
professor, and
Oh,
he
you're
would have
kidding.
he would have a conversation with, like, okay, who's the head of your sociology department?
Oh,
Listen,
that's so
I just
great.
had a thought about something. What do you think about that? And he would have a conversation with
That's
university professors. He would call up art critics from the newspaper. He would call up, whatever. And again, interested in everything. Because he was interested in everything, he collected a lot of
of
multicolored dots.
course.
So
Yeah.
he could make these connections. And you and I have both had this experience of thinking, oh, you know what this reminds me of?
Yeah.
Reminds me of that time when I took that vacation in Italy. It reminds me of that
Yeah.
that that it reminds me of the third movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the one that
Yes.
most people don't think about. Yeah,
Yes.
because you know how just
So great. Oh,
it's
love
it's
that.
it's 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 being curious, just like the kids.
Yes, I
Being
think
curious
that's
and being a problem solver.
beautiful. Yeah, and I know a few people similar to the person you just described, your Uncle Bob. I can imagine my father-in-law, who actually lives not far at all from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He's very similar
Oh,
in terms
wow.
of his
Okay.
curiosity. And several folks in my husband's side of the family and mine. But yeah, those curiosity, those people who are so curious are fun to be around because they collect all these dots.
Well,
So
it makes you, not only does it make you a, a better innovator and a better storyteller, because you've got this
yeah, yeah,
wide collection of dots to
yeah.
to connect.
Mhm.
It makes you a more interesting person.
It really
You
does.
can have conversations with almost anybody because you're going to know at least
Yeah.
here's my measure. I know I'm not going to be an expert on everything. I've got expertise in a few areas and a few
Hmm.
areas only.
Sure.
But
Sure.
I like to try and at least know enough about other areas
Hmm.
that I can ask a question that would interest an expert.
Yes. Yes. And
If
it's
I'm
not,
talking to someone,
a stupid question or sounds really elementary. Like I've got a
or
little
the
something.
platitudinous, the one that they get
Yeah.
all the time. It's like, oh, I love it when you're talking to somebody who's got some expertise in something, and you ask them a question, they go, okay, that's an interesting question.
Yes.
And then they'll go on and on. I mean, that's my work is done.
My work here is done.
My work here is done.
Question.
They'll go on and on and on, and then they'll talk about what a great conversationalist you are.
Yes, because you asked one great question, and
In order to ask that great question, you've got to have there's got to be a dot someplace that you can.
The one piece that I don't mean to lament and wish that I lived way back when all the time, but one of the things I really miss about the pre-internet era is what you said about your Uncle Bob, and the requirement there was that there used to be that you would have to go ask people about these things.
You'd have to have a conversation.
You have to talk to people, engage them. I'm also thinking about the powerful work that you do, Bill, with roomfuls of innovators who aren't innovators yet, but they're going to be by the time they leave the room. Or
they don't know they're innovators yet. Yeah.
Right. But the trust that's built in the middle of doing the work you do with them is very similar to the trust that's built in the rooms of people I work with around how to build a story and tell a message and be vulnerable and authentic. And
it's very similar.
Yeah, these are things our world needs more of and in higher volume. And so when you figure out how to play the notes of innovation, that's great, but learn to play the music, right? And that's the same for story, like learn the mechanics, but then learn to deliver it with beauty and intrigue and just electricity.
And make music.
Yeah, and get out there, right? And just don't be perfect, be perfectly you. And that's
that's good. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I love that. Bill, where can people find you? What's coming up on your radar? Do you have a book you're reading or writing that you want to share with us?
Well, I'm always reading books. I usually have at least 4 books going at one time. And this is kind of what I plan. I usually have one nonfiction business book.
Okay.
One nonfiction book that has nothing to do with business.
Okay.
One really good, well-written fiction book, usually a Booker Prize winner or a Pulitzer Prize winner.
Okay.
And then a popcorn fiction book.
Yeah.
Just for, when you're just like, oh, I've had enough of everything. So
yes.
So I've got, I almost always have at least, those 4 kinds of books. But I did just finish writing my own. This is a draft copy. This says here, not for resale. And this isn't actually what the cover design is.
Not available yet.
Not available yet, but it's called Innovation Unleashed: How to Find the Ideas That Matter and Transform Your Business.
Well, boom. There you go.
So it's for leaders who know that standing still isn't an option. And it isn't an option. So that's going to be coming out later on this year.
Awesome.
As far as how they can get a hold of me or know more about, the best place, of course, is my website, billstainton.com, BILLSTAINTON.com. I know that said that way too fast. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. That's Bill Stainton, LinkedIn. But for viewers and listeners of this podcast, I made something a little special. I just made it this morning, as we're taping this.
Awesome.
It is a quick downloadable PDF called 5 Simple Ways to Unlock Breakthrough Innovation in 15 Minutes or Less. 5 ways to unlock your own natural innovation. None of them take more than 15 minutes.
Oh, I love it.
That by going to billstainton.com/greenlight as one word.
Yes.
Greenlight.
Boom.
So you go there, you'll be able to spark creativity.
Oh, that's
great. Creativity. You'll be able to start thinking differently immediately.
Yeah. BillStainton.com/greenlight. Pick up your
Greenlight
PDF today. Yeah, that's fantastic. Bill, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure, as I knew that it would be. So many
stories. It is a blast. Well, it's always fun talking with you.
Yes, so much good stuff happening here. For all of you.
Too bad there's no bourbon involved this time.
What did you say?
I said, too bad there's no bourbon involved.
Right. Well, for all of you listening, all of you watching, thank you so much for joining me here with 29-time Emmy award-winning keynoter Bill Stainton. Bill, thanks so much for being with us. Thanks everybody for watching and listening. We will see you at our next episode. Until then, get out there, go nail it, and turn a red light green. Bye-bye.